Hi, everyone. I am really excited to be a part of Techno Day 2021 and happy International Women's Day to all of you who's joining the session. My name is Kushlani Silva. I am a marketing strategist and consultant. And once again, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to speak to all of you today about some of my experiences as a consultant. I'm just 3 months into the process, and I'm really looking forward to talking to all of you about it. So let's get started. So first up, that's me. I still am a technology marketer. I've been doing it for 11 years, and currently I work as an independent consultant helping technology organizations with their marketing efforts. I'm from Sri Lanka, as you can see, and I'm really glad to be representing Sri Lanka during this event as well. So if you haven't heard of Sri Lanka, it's absolutely beautiful. It's an island surrounded by wonderful beaches. As you can see, the beach is one of my favorite places to go. That's a picture I took from a beach in Negombo. So once everything settles, I do hope you can make a trip down here to Sri Lanka as well. And I find fitness to be a very large part of my life. In fact, that's how I usually relax after a tough day at work or after a tough week. And I like reading, but not the very intellectual kind of reading, I would say, because I read to give my mind a break. And I love reading crime novels, and that's also a great way that really helps me relax. So moving on to today's session. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I currently work as a marketing consultant in the technology space. But there was a journey to get to this point, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that journey now. So since I've been working since 2004 really. So soon after my higher education, I started working, and I worked in different places until finally I landed a job in marketing in 2009 at a technology organization called WSO2. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the company. And I worked there for 11 years, and it was a fantastic journey because I got to learn so much in the process. I got to see the marketing team grow from 2 people up to a 30-person team throughout that time. And I was fortunate enough to be involved in different roles. So obviously, when I started, it was a lot to do with execution. I got guidance in terms of what content we were writing, what sort of things we should do for social media. I led the webinar campaign for a long period of time during my stay there, and I worked with channel partners. I worked on product marketing, and my final role really was overseeing the execution efforts of the corporate marketing team. So I did many different things during my time there, and it was great because I got exposed to different resources from different tools. So everything from Pardot to Salesforce to Sprout Social. On the social media front, I got exposed to so many different events. I was fortunate enough to go to conferences like API Days, OzCon, and even manage and organize some of WSO2's largest events. So we used to have our annual conference, then we did a bunch of summits. But the bottom line, I think, throughout that journey, what I value the most, more than the technologies and the tools and the events I was exposed to, was the fact that I got to work with so much talent from engineering, from technology, from marketing, from sales, finance, HR, the works. Because working in the marketing function of a technology company, obviously you can't function independently. You're always talking to the product teams, you're talking to the solutions architecture teams, you're talking to sales. So it's a role that allows you to really work with other parts of the organization and really get to know how the entire business comes together. So I loved working with so much talent and with such a large scope to really experiment and try different things on. And then towards early mid last year, this is something that I had wanted to do for some time. I really wanted to see how I could take this experience. Now, I saw WSO2 grow from a small company towards one of the leaders in the open source technology space. But I was always curious about what would it be like, because I started to forget what it was like starting a marketing journey from scratch. Where you have zero budget, you have no clue about the kind of tools that you should be using, you don't know what events you should sponsor, whether you should sponsor, you don't have budget. So I started craving for that startup environment almost, I would say. And I thought that in Sri Lanka right now, there are many technology companies at the moment. The environment is quite conducive for technology startups, and as a result, in Sri Lanka, lots of startups are formed. In fact, we have different associations and organizations that support this network, and I am in fact part of one of them, called SLASCOM. So I was always curious about how are these newer technology companies, what are they doing in their marketing efforts, how are they navigating challenges? Because when you normally start off, you don't have a lot of resources, you don't have a lot of skill sets in-house. It's almost the CEO or the co-founder who's writing the website content, and who's talking to the agencies, who's talking to press, and he or she is just playing a multi-dimensional role. So that curiosity really led me to a point where I thought, look, I should now take these experiences that I've gathered over the past 11 years, and I need to now apply it to different organizations of different sizes. And that was a challenge that I presented myself with, because I felt that as marketers, especially in the technology space, you have to be able to adapt and adjust to your environment. And I think COVID-19 was the perfect example of that. And the company I used to work for earlier, we were very focused on events. So we used to sponsor some of the larger marquee conferences I mentioned earlier, and then we used to have our own conferences. So all of that suddenly stopped, which meant, we had to realign our strategies and rethink how we were going to get to the same goals that we were going to with events. How were we going to do it with other channels like content and digital? So this appetite for really wanting to work with different organizations, hear different perspectives, just see how the technology scope works outside of what I had known and loved and learned over the past 11 years, is what led me to move out and start out by myself. And this is by no means an easy or even a direct decision, I would say, because I was so used to a certain way of working. It was the middle of a pandemic. A lot of people thought that it was an absolutely impractical move, because it was very difficult to retain a job and even to get another job. And when I started, I had absolutely no idea how it would turn out. But I told myself, if I didn't take the chance now, and if I didn't do it now, I would just keep getting comfortable with what I'm doing, and I would never take the plunge. So I thought, you know what, let me do it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll find a way. I'll figure it out. And it is with that mindset that in 2020 October, I started becoming an independent consultant full time. And one of the things that I have learned, particularly over the past 3 months, and one of the experiences I appreciate the most, is the fact that I still get to do almost the same thing that I did when I was working in a corporate setup. I still get to play different roles, because some organizations that I work with, some of them want strategy and some of them want execution, or they want both, because most of the companies I work with are technology startups. So going back to the previous scenario I mentioned, it's probably a CEO, a CIO, CTO, and maybe a couple of other engineers or architects who are working. They have literally no marketing support in-house. So for organizations like that, there's no point me only giving them the strategy. So I have to help them with the execution as well. For example, if they're putting up a website, I'd help them with the UX and the UI elements. Obviously, there'd be a designer on board, but I'd be taking them through the whole process. And again, I've been exposed. It's just 3 months. I know it's a very short period of time, but even the reason for me to submit this session and talk about these experiences is because I think in those 3 months I've learned a lot. And one of the things that keeps me going is that I know that in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months, in the next year, I'm going to learn so much more, and I'm going to be able to keep doing what I do better. And another thing that I really like is seeing the different perspectives of marketing and business. And one of the most rewarding experiences is sitting down with founders and CEOs and just listening to them explain about their vision for the business. And that always is one of the best parts of the conversation when I onboard a new customer, is because you just get to hear them pour their heart out as to why they started the company, what value they're trying to give, and how they're trying to make their customers' lives better. And that is really valuable input, even if they probably don't go ahead with the engagement. I've still learned something. I've still got to meet someone new and hear a different perspective. So I think I would have had over like maybe 75 conversations with different people of different business principles, all who are now trying to say, okay, I have an idea, I have a product, I think it's time to do something about it and to bring it a little bit closer to the target audience. So just being able to learn throughout these 3 months, I think, is probably the best part of my experience being a consultant. So again, I think I covered this a little bit earlier as well, but one of the reasons that I really wanted to make the change is to be able to adapt to any sort of situation and take some of my experiences from what I learned into all of these different setups. Because the organization I worked for obviously was a big organization. So in terms of budgets, resources, we had a team, we had a functional team. So there was a team who handled content, a team who handled social media, a team who handled website. But not every organization has the luxury to do that. So most often they would have one marketing executive, and this marketing executive would be responsible for the whole gamut of things. So this is one situation where I come in and I do a little bit of mentoring for the marketing executive, and I tell them what they need to prioritize and so on. But just applying myself to those different situations, zero budget, zero team, to minimal budget, 1 to 2% team, and just hearing them saying, look, I'm still on the first round of funding, it would be great if you can do something organically, what do you recommend? So then I have to put my thinking cap on and think from that perspective. And then they would tell you, look, I've been really trying to find someone to get this done, to hire in-house, but I haven't been able to do so. Then I need to think, okay, there's no marketing support in-house, but I still need to help this company. How do I do it? And fortunately, I think the experiences, even though the context is different, I've still been able to apply a lot of those experiences into some of these smaller companies who are trying to go about their technology marketing journeys. And the kind of work that I do, it cuts across various things. So I work on projects on value propositions and positioning. I work on projects where I help them with their website, on their content strategy, social media and digital, and just seeing how they prioritize these activities and seeing what they think that they can achieve out of those activities is one of the best learning experiences I have. So how did I do this? Obviously, I was stepping into a territory that was very outside my comfort zone, because I was used to getting up, opening my laptop, having a set of things to do. The work would keep coming. I would have someone from the marketing team who would need my help, or someone from sales or engineering who would need my help. So in short, yes, the work kept coming because I was working for an organization and they were paying me to carry out a certain bunch of tasks. So the first thing I decided that I needed to do was I had to find my niche. So what I mean by this is, right now, there are plenty of marketing consultants or strategists or coaches or mentors whatever you would like to call them. There are lots of people who conduct these sort of engagements, and that's fantastic, I think, because it also means that nobody can monopolize the situation, that all of the companies, regardless of how much they can invest, they have a fair play in terms of the consultants or the strategists that they can pick from. But what I identified is that the consultants in the technology marketing space were limited. So if you were in services, or if you were in FMCG, or if you were in hospitality, there were marketing consultants also similar to me, people who worked in organizations and who had come out, who were willing to help these companies. So Sri Lanka is known for tourism, or we were used to before all of this happened. So if you were to start up a small boutique villa, let's say down south or somewhere in Nigambo, and you were trying to figure out the marketing for it, there would be a lot of consultants or a lot of freelancers or marketing strategists who could help you make sure that you got the right kind of guests to your villa and that you had sales and profits and so on. But technology marketing is quite different. There's a different set of skills required, and the way you approach technology marketing is quite different. So the technology companies that exist in Sri Lanka couldn't really find a consultant or support or even in-house skills to help amplify their technology marketing efforts. Now, I realized with my experience, and this is my niche, and this is probably a niche that even some of the companies might not have identified, because they leave marketing as a low priority item. So you get the product out the door, you get sales, you have some sort of outbound sales model, but you don't think about the sustainability of marketing after you've put up a website. So you think, okay, I've got my website, I don't really need social media or digital presence or content now, I'll think about it later. But then after about an year of being in business, you realize, okay, I have to start marketing my brand now. And one thing I particularly realized with some of the technology companies is that even what they have on their websites is something written by the founder. And you haven't really thought through the value proposition. What are you actually offering that is making your customers' lives easier and better? So you focus a lot on features and not so much the value. But there's nobody to tell them that, or nobody to guide them towards aligning that mindset, because there's no marketing support in the middle. So I realized that if you had that marketing support in the middle, the effort that you need to put afterwards is a lot less, which means your processes are much more streamlined and you can see results at the beginning itself. So this was a niche I found, and I decided, okay, this is where I need to be. Then I looked at amplifying my brand. So since I worked for a large technology organization earlier, the fact that I worked for that organization already gave my brand a little bit of a boost. But I knew that wasn't enough. You had to obviously do more. So I started, just like how I did for Tech Nowadays, I started submitting talks to conferences. I started writing, so I write for a magazine called Articulate here in Sri Lanka, who they cover a lot of news and events around the technology space. I started writing my own content, and I use channels like LinkedIn and Twitter because those are the places where this technology community resides. So I knew that I had to talk about my experiences, and not so much saying that, here's what I can bring to the table, but just sharing what I had learned over my time at WSO2 in the form of content, in the form of conference presentations, and in the form of insight. And as a result of doing that, I started engaging better with my community. So I'm quite active on Twitter and LinkedIn both. So in terms of Twitter, I would sign up for Twitter chats. I found them to be an absolutely valuable tool to hear insights and thoughts from your peers, and to be able to share your insights as well. So I started networking more on Twitter. I started networking more on LinkedIn. I was having conversations with other marketing professionals, not necessarily in the tech industry, but in other industries as well. And I got involved with organizations like Slascom, like Articulate, Product Tank. I started talking about my experiences and stressing on the need for investing in marketing at the beginning itself, rather than waiting for a little bit of time and then going into it. And also stressing on the need to think about marketing from a holistic perspective, and not something that stops after you've put up a website or after you created your social media channels. So that is how I started taking my brand to the community and talking about who I am, and the kind of experiences I come with. And obviously all of that led to me contributing to the technology space, because that's where the target audience resides. So my target audience essentially are technology companies, startups, or those who are a little mature into their product journeys, because then they would consult with me whether they're trying to launch into a new region, or whether they are looking at revamping their brand, or whether they're trying to boost their presence on social media, or figure out lead gen mechanism, whatever it is. So that is how I engaged with the community. So I found my niche. I amplified my brand within the niche by engaging better with the community, by speaking at events, sharing content, and I would do little things, nothing major. Like I would do marketing motivation Monday posts every Monday on Twitter and LinkedIn, and people would see that, and I figured that they would appreciate it, because it was nothing groundbreaking or nothing completely out there, just simple, because I believe that marketing doesn't have to be overcomplicated. So it was simple tidbits of information, things that I had experienced during my time working, or whatever I felt like I should share with the community. I went ahead and did it, and that's how I was able to kind of establish my brand within this niche and connect with my target audience. So some of the things that I learned and I realized is critical if you are to kind of make the most of your time as a consultant. Three things which are absolutely important. So patience, because the first part of my consultancy journey, you would get a bunch of requests. People would ask to get on a call with you. They'd ask you to send proposals, and after that, it's a waiting game. So you would send a proposal, you would wait a week or two, and because I was new to it, I wasn't sure when should I follow up. Do I call them? Do I email them? Do I let them get back to me? Because I didn't want to seem, I didn't want to come off as being too pushy. So patience is very important. And I think you will learn the mechanisms of how to follow up also after you've done it for a while, when you know that, okay, this is what, this is approximately how long they take to make a decision. Time management, again, is critical, because unlike the job that you do in a corporate environment, where in the corporate environment, others in the company know what's on your plate to some extent. And if you have two deadlines back to back, you can always tell one person, I'm sorry, look, this other urgent project is coming up, and they would know of that urgent project because you all work in the same organization. With consultancy, it's different. Your clients will look, obviously they know you have other projects, but they are going to see you as their consultant. So when you are taking on projects, make sure that you understand how long it takes to complete a certain project. Give yourself a little bit of buffer time, because things don't always go according to plan. And plan your time based on the amount of effort that you have to put for particular projects. And it makes sense to take projects in sort of a time frame mix. So you can maybe do 2 longer term projects and 1 short term project together in 1 month, so that you're not taxing yourself too much trying to fight deadlines. And the other thing is mind management. This is a funny term, but I call this mind management, because you have to switch gears a lot more than you would when you were in a corporate job. So again, there you might be doing different things, but it's still the same. It's it's the same technology. It's the same set of products. It's the same. You're moving towards the same company vision. But here you're probably dealing with 3 different companies who have 3 very different visions and 3 different sets of expectations from you. So if you take a day, like a typical day, let's say, you work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, you might have to break up your day to work on all 3 projects. So You might think that that's not very productive, and you might want to spend block a day per project, but it doesn't always work like that. So then you have to switch gears quite often. And so today you might be working on a conversational AI platforms positioning, and then you probably also have to write some copy for an HR platform, and then maybe towards the night you have to do a presentation deck for another company who wants you to tell them the best ways to optimize their website. So this is the tough part, but I like it also because it almost forces you to be able to compartmentalize how you work. So that's why time management and mind management go hand in hand, and there's no tried and tested way to make this easier. I think it only gets easier with time and as you work. So I've made plenty of mistakes in these 3 months on these two fronts. I've also lost patience quite a bit, but I've learned so that I don't make those mistakes again. So don't be too hard on yourself if you find that in a particular month you've taken on too much and it's really stressing you out. Figure out a way, maybe talk to your clients and see how you can push some of the deadlines, but don't blame yourself or don't be too hard on yourself, because it happens. You're still new. That's what I tell myself all the time. You're still new. You're figuring out the mechanisms of how this works. So take it as a learning, and make sure that you don't kind of put yourself in the same situation the next time. The other thing is, if you are a one-man or woman business, essentially, so you are your own HR manager, which means if you're having a tough day, you've kind of got to motivate yourself, right? You are a financial analyst because you have to keep track of your revenue. You have to look at your cash projections for the next month. If you feel like you're running low, you might have to figure out how you're going to break up the payments for the next time. For example, if you don't take an initial payment at all and wait till the end of the engagement to take payments, you might get into a cash flow crunch. And then you'll have to figure out how you're going to price work. My gosh, that is the toughest part, I think, of this job. It's just figuring out pricing. I'll talk a little bit about that later as well. You have to be a little bit of a lawyer too, because you're going to have NDAs, you're going to have to draft contracts. But my recommendation is please get help here. I do it as well, because this is a specialized area that we need to really figure out the technicalities of it. And you're also an administrative assistant, because you have to keep track of a lot of documents, proposals, contracts, invoices. So I'm issuing my own invoices as well, and you have to see when payments are due. Maybe you might have to pay some of the partners that you work with. For example, I work with designers, so I have to pay them. I have to keep track of my expenses. I have to keep track of my income. So you're doing a whole bunch of things. And again, as this is a task. I'm not trying to glamorize it. It is a task, but I like it because I hadn't done this before. Because you have when you work in a corporate environment, these are you don't think twice about these things. But I like it because it's making me more organized, I think. So I really like the fact that I get to play this multifaceted role and learn different parts of this function as well. So one thing that I would like to use as a summary is what I've learned. And the first thing I would like to say is every inquiry that you get, whether it's over the phone or whether it's on LinkedIn or somebody drops you a mail, or you might feel from the nature of the inquiry itself that it will not convert, but treat it like it will, because that is when you put your best foot forward, even on that initial conversation or just how you reply their email. Treat it like it would convert, because then you're going all in, and the person on the other end will appreciate the effort that you put in, will appreciate your time, and there's a good chance, it's all a matter of attitude. There's a good chance that you can actually convert it if you go in with a positive attitude, and if you're open to listen, and if you're flexible, that really helps. And it's also a good way to identify your funnel, because I would have got like 50 or something inquiries, but it kind of trickles down, and you end up with a much smaller pool that actually converts. So it's good to create your own funnel, so that okay, this month I've got about 25 inquiries. Chances are maybe 3 to 5 of them will convert. So it's good for you to plan ahead as well. Your past experience is valuable, absolutely, but you have to adapt it to the client's context. So you cannot tell a client with a very small budget, you cannot recommend tools that you had used before, because you know that it is not going to work into their budgets. And no matter how, another thing that's very important in this role, I think, is humility. You have to know that you might have been managing a team in your past organization, but now you're a consultant and you're working with different clients, and you can't assume that everything, and you can kind of help the client overcome whatever problem that they have. So you have to be a little humble and tell them, okay, look, let's try out certain things. There are areas that I might not be too familiar with, I might have to get to know those. But just be humble and use your past experience as much as you can, but adapt it to the current context. Keep record of every interaction and engagement. This is also good for the funnel. And even if you later want to go back and see, maybe somebody had a conversation with you but the engagement didn't come through, but it always helps to have a good relationship. Let's say somebody wanted to do a website project with you, and then they kind of went with someone else. You can still have a conversation with them and say, look, hey, I saw the new website, it looks great, maybe you can optimize on certain points. But it's good to keep a record of those interactions so that you can continue to have conversations with them. And also you can almost do your own market research and figure out, okay, out of the 50 inquiries I got, 20% of them were from startups, from the CEOs. But out of that, only 8 converted. Why is that? Maybe because it's CEO, maybe you should have, kind of had the conversation differently. Maybe you should have spoken about your references at the beginning. But from the point of making the rest of your pipeline improve, this is a really great way to do your own research and figure out how to iteratively improve your engagements after that. Be open to feedback. A lot of the companies I work with, I'm thankful that I have a good relationship with them. So they always tell me, listen, this might not really work for us. Let's try it in a different way. But be open to feedback, and you have to respect the fact that they know the business best. You might be a subject matter expertise, but be open to the feedback that they give. If it's constructive, obviously. If it's not, you can have a conversation and sort it out. But being open to feedback is very important as well. Have a single communications channel. This is, again, something that might seem simple, but it is not the case, because you will see a convergence of at least for me. So I have clients right now who talk to me on WhatsApp. Obviously, they use email. That's the most common tool, but they talk on WhatsApp. So it's difficult for me to keep track of the multiple conversations. So I think Slack is great, especially if you're working with 2 or more people, because then you can have conversations collaboratively. And especially, so I'm based out of Sri Lanka, but I work with partners in Australia, in the States. So you can't always get on calls because of time zone differences. So in the event you need to get something clarified quickly, you can just interact on Slack and get it sorted out. So I think Slack is a really great way to communicate if you have teams that you're working with, who are 2 or more people, and especially in different time zones. Figure out a sustainable pricing model. This is tough, and I have still not done this. And I find that some days, most of my time is spent on proposals, while it's spent on, putting together the price for the proposal. So again, here I would say, I've seen certain pricing models which recommend that you first figure out the kind of income you want to get for the year, and then divide it by the number of expected clients. But I think, again, this is my personal opinion, but rather than that, I would say try to measure it as much as possible from 2 aspects. 1, from the time that you're putting in, and 2, from the value that you're giving. So for example, if you take a website project, you might think, okay, I'm taking this much of time to do it, but also add in the element of value. So a website is an investment. You are doing the website today, but that website is probably going to be around for the next 2 years at least. And that's a good way to, if your clients feel like, okay, it's a little above their price point, you can always tell them, look, the reason for this is because it's a long-term investment on your part. After you have it, think of all the return that you get. All of your promotions are going to point to it. It will be SEO'd. So think of all of those factors when you create the price, and try to look at the value that you generate as a result of writing that content piece, as opposed to just tying it to an income source. So finally, what I would like to say is, if you want to take the plunge, and I'm glad to see a lot of people in the tech marketing space and in other spaces actually going forward with this. So that's great. I love seeing it, and I love hearing those success stories as well. So if you want to take the plunge, I would say the first thing that you do is assess your financial situation, because unlike being in a corporate job, you get paid for the work that you do. So if you want to take a break, for example, if you want to take 2 weeks off, and you're not going to take any projects at that time, then for those 2 weeks you're not really going to earn any income, whereas if you were in a job and you took leave, you would still be paid. So if you have any monthly kind of commitments, then it might be a little risky to do it. But nevertheless, if you've done your research, and if you've built your pipeline, and you can sustain it for a couple of months, and you're okay, then that's fine. But I think assessing your financial situation is important before you make a decision like this, and identify what you want to do. You don't have to have it all figured out. I didn't, and I'm sure many of those who go into consultancy don't either. But identify at least at a high level in terms of what you want to do and what value you are going to generate out of that. And that's a good way to find your market. So when you find your market, at least at the beginning, try to focus on a relatively smaller market, and then you can expand, because when you work with a smaller market, you get to know that market inside out, and it's better for you in terms of networking and in terms of community as well. And figure out your value propositions, because right now everybody is looking to get value. Nobody wants to get something off of a checklist and then move on to the next item. It's all about value, and it is much easier to convince someone to work with you if you are convinced of the value that you can give. Then the effort that you have to put in is much less also on a conversation. And finally, give it time. It takes time. I think it'll probably take me about a year to figure. I probably will still have things to figure out, but give it time. If your first month seems slow, or if your first month seems like it's all difficult projects, or you're not really enjoying it, don't give up. It takes time. It takes time for you to find that passion and to find that rhythm, basically. So even if it seems a little disheartening or difficult, if you start off and you love it, then that's fantastic. My hope is that you continue to love it. But even if you don't love it at the beginning, give it time, and it will get better over time. You will learn over time, and then you will learn to give yourself the right kind of boundaries and the right kind of conditions, so that you can really achieve what you're hoping to achieve. So that's all for now. I hope you found the session useful, and if you're thinking of being a consultant and starting off, I wish you all the very best. I really hope you knock it out of the park. And if you'd like to connect, I'd love to get to know the attendees and the rest of the speakers as well. You have my Twitter handle, my LinkedIn, and my Gmail as well. If you want to have a conversation about consultancy, and how to progress into consultancy, or just a conversation about marketing or technology, I'd love to have a chat. I'm looking to learn from others in the domain as well. And that's all for my session. Thank you once again to Tech Now Day for having me on board. And once again, happy International Women's Day. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.